Welcome to day 2 of the virtual summit on ag tech, where we will be exploring innovations in agriculture with a series of keynotes, panels, and startup pitches. My name is Elizabeth Lanchowski-Holmes, and I am a first-year MBA student at the Tuck School of Business. I am joined here by Sofia Elizondo, who will be delivering our first keynote of the day on harvesting nature's intelligence. I have 2 quick reminders before we get started. First, please enter questions in the Ask a Question box at the bottom of the screen and vote for your favorite questions. We'll try to cover the top-rated questions at the end of each session. Second, please engage with the summit on Twitter and Instagram using the handle VirtualSummitAT. To kick off day 2, I'm very excited to introduce Sofia Elizondo, the co-founder and COO of Brightseed, a San Francisco-based company that discovers powerful plant-based ingredients that are natural and scientifically proven to improve health and wellness. Brightseed has been featured as a 2020 world-changing idea by Fast Company for using AI to bring data and clarity to the world of plant-based nutrition. Sofia is a leader with a track record of business model innovation, working with consumer goods, pharmaceutical, and technology companies, and she is a former researcher at the BCG Henderson Institute and advisor to the UN. She launched, grew, and managed multi-million-dollar business lines in online and food technology venture-backed startups in Silicon Valley. Sofia holds an MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Thank you so much for joining us today. Without further ado, I'll pass it off to Sofia for our keynote.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. Really happy to be here, and please let me know if any of this tech does not go smoothly. I'm happy to make adjustments as we go. I'm Sofia Elizondo. I co-founded Brightseed, and today I want to tell you a little bit about both Brightseed, the company, and why what we do is so important to ag, food, and health. And then leave some time at the end to tell you about my journey, because I know there's a lot of students on the phone, and I was in your seat not so long ago, and would love to share any tips that may be useful. Brightseed pioneers the use of artificial intelligence to find previously unknown phytonutrients present in plants, and we incorporate them into everyday foods and beverages. And in doing so, we're able to understand the intersection between humans and nature at a level that is much more precise than has ever been possible before. Our whole objective or reason for being is to make diet-induced chronic disease a thing of the past. And today, food, unfortunately, is a major driver for disease instead of being a source of nourishment. So before we dive in, however, I think it would be useful to level set on our most important asset here, which are plants. I know that yesterday you talked a lot about plant protein and had a few panels on the focus on plant protein. Last I checked, Beyond Meat's market cap was over $6 billion, and it's astounding what plant protein has done to the industry in the last few years. It addresses a really important concern around sustainability. But importantly, plants give us many things other than proteins. Plants give us carbohydrates, like sugars and fibers. They give us lipids, like olive oils and avocado oils and rose oil. And importantly, they also give us micronutrients or phytonutrients. These are small metabolite compounds that are immensely important for plants' survival. In fact, most of the genome of plants encode for their capability to express these metabolites or these micronutrients. It blows my mind that plant genomes can be 8 times more complex than human genomes, which is pretty humbling. We think we're very advanced beings, and plant genomes can be much more sophisticated. And the reason why these genomes are so complex is because plants need to be able to express different kinds of small natural chemicals. so that they can attract bees or repel pests, or communicate with their environment in ways that only plants can. So these phytonutrients are powerful stuff. We've are very familiar with some of them, like caffeine, or some essential vitamins like vitamin C present in citrus fruits, or beta carotene in carrots. In fact, a third of all FDA-approved drugs come from these small molecules and natural products. Aspirin comes from a tree. Taxol, the breast cancer drug, comes from a tree. Metformin, the drug for diabetes, comes from a tree. So we know that a plant-based diet is fundamental for health and longevity. In fact, it is the #1 driver. A diet is the #1 driver for premature death worldwide. But also, it is the basis for a third of our pharmaceutical industry. So, and in particular, these micronutrients or phytonutrients are. So we would think that science deeply knows what are all of these natural chemicals that plants produce, because they're so important for the human body when we ingest them. Fortunately, that is not the case. There are tens of thousands of known compounds, probably around the order of magnitude of 100,000, yet tens of millions exist and are still unknown. And academics call this space in the middle the dark matter of nutrition, much like dark matter in cosmic language. We know it's there because we can see the force that it pulls some galaxies and stars, but we have no idea what it is. In nutrition, the dark matter are these phytonutrients present in plant sources that we know have a beneficial impact in human health, because longitudinal studies show that we have more optimal health studies when we incorporate these plants into our diets, but we have no idea what they precisely are. What is the compound? What is the mechanism of action that gets triggered when we ingest it? And therefore, how do we optimize for it? How do we grow and harvest the right kinds of plant sources that can ensure that these phytonutrients remain in our diets? The reason for this dark space is actually pretty reasonable. The process to elucidate every single molecule is an analog process. You physically, in the most advanced labs in the world, you need the physical compound to understand its structure so that we can start to understand what the compound can do in our bodies. This takes weeks or even months per compound, and it's very expensive. Some people spend their entire PhDs elucidating a single compound. And at this rate, it would take the world 50,000 years to map this dark matter that exists in the middle. Brightseed skips this step and essentially digitizes the search. So we don't depend on analog physical compounds to understand what is this richness that plants have already created. We built a technology to predict what compounds these plants are likely to produce, and to also predict how do we connect these to human health. So at the core of Brightseed, and we spent the first 2 years of the company building this proprietary AI platform out, we are able to link plant sources with the compounds that they create and with the health benefits they're likely to have. We, on the far right-hand side, encode decades of biomedical research so that we can effectively search for it. We've built proprietary libraries of compounds, which is the cloud you see in the middle, which is actual real data. It's one of the visualizations that we can have of our growing data set. And on the very left-hand side, we source plants, most of which are not necessarily exotic Amazonian flowers, but are plants that have a history of commercial use and that are important for existing and current supply chains. Our AI is able to predict what compounds are linked to what plant sources, what health benefits these compounds are likely to have. And all of this is an in silico prediction that speeds up the search for a compound that is nutritious and beneficial that we can then validate with biological assays and clinical trials. So with a tool like this, we can have answers to many different kinds of questions. You can start at the very left-hand side from an agricultural perspective, and this is what we're doing with some partners today. They have a specific plant source that they're very interested in, and we can ask the question, what else can my plant do other than provide healthy fibers or other than provide a natural colorant? What other phytonutrients are there that are valuable that I'm missing out? Or you can ask the question starting from the right-hand side. I'm a company that exists to promote cognitive development. What kind of natural plant sources have the capacity to produce compounds that will promote cognition and cognitive health? Or you can even start in the middle and ask, what other compound is like this synthetic compound that I want to move away from as an ingredient provider? Or what other compound has similar effects than curcumin in turmeric does? So it is a highly flexible search engine, and at this rate, using computation to map the connections between plants and the compounds that they create. We won't take 50,000 years to elucidate this dark matter of nutrition, but we're on track to do it in 5. Today, we have tripled the space that is known to science in plant compounds. And by the end of this year, we anticipate we will 10x it and have a library of at least 1 million compounds that we can search for optimal solutions for specific health conditions. So we've progressed really fast, and it's a very exciting time for us to be harvesting the insights that we can now see and that we can now find. So everybody, however, in Silicon Valley, which is where I'm based, will probably tell you they have a platform technology, and the real question is, does it actually work? And so Brightseed is not only a platform technology, but we also find our own phytonutrients, the crown jewels, if you will, and then take those to market ourselves. And so I want to walk you through the first example real quick to see if we can bring this to life. We started with a really hard problem. There are 2 billion people worldwide who are overweight or obese. For the first time, this is way more people than those that are undernourished, almost by 4x. 25% of people worldwide have a condition called fatty liver disease. And fatty liver is a comorbidity of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, kidney failure. Essentially, if you have a fatty liver, you're 57% more likely to die than if you don't. This is fueling tremendous costs in chronic disease healthcare. Actually, it also seems to be one of the top reasons why COVID complications exist. Other than age, metabolic health underlying conditions seem to be one of the biggest factors in COVID complications, which is really interesting. And it's fueling a giant financial burden. By in 10 more years, the burden of diabetes will be over $2 trillion, which is basically the next G8 country. So we chose to go after this problem, and we used Forager, our AI capability, to predict what can we find that can be helpful to support metabolic health, and in particular to help our liver shed that fat that gets accumulated in the face of an unhealthy diet. And so we partnered with an NIH-funded lab in San Diego, and we found a lead in a plant source 10 times faster than any medicinal chemistry high-throughput screening program could find. And it does this to your liver cells. On the left-hand side, you see a liver, human liver cells that have are stained in red wherever there is fat present. And fat that accumulates in the liver is what causes this condition that is very, very harmful for metabolic health and other associated conditions. After exposure to the phytonutrient we found in a plant source that you're all familiar with and you probably had this morning or yesterday, you see what you have on the right-hand side. The fat that tends to accumulate in liver cells gets expelled, and therefore your liver can continue to function properly. So we found over 80 plant sources worldwide that contain this phytonutrient. We found the best source in the world for it. We're in the process of taking it to market, and we anticipate we will launch later this year with the first Brightseed branded specialty ingredient that can address a functional health benefit that is so critically important, like metabolic health. So it's really exciting because the core technology is yielding commercial opportunities like the one we're bringing to market here. So for consumers, it will be a natural, tasty, and efficacious product that they can actually trust. For physicians, this will be an option to direct their patients to better daily habits when they can drink and eat food and beverages that contain this micronutrient. And for Brightseed, this is only the beginning, which is why a computational approach is so exciting. This is a view of our AI, of how our AI views the world. It's essentially, imagine that it's a Google Maps of how plant phytonutrients connect to human health systematically. So any dot in blue is a health condition, say metabolic health. Any dot in green is a human biological pathway that connects to that condition. And any dot in pink is a plant compound that modulates or triggers these biological pathways. When this I get very excited when I talk about this slide because this kind of view doesn't exist in science. A systematic connection between plant compounds and the health benefits that they can have has never been done before. It's something that we know anecdotally from traditional medicines like traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda. And it's also very different from the traditional Western paradigm of health, where you have one drug that hits one green dot or one biological pathway very strongly, which enables us sometimes to manage an infectious disease, but it's a really hard way to deal with chronic illness. Because with chronic diseases, you need to move the entire system in a direction that is desirable, because our bodies are biological systems, and if you punch one biological access point, the others will compensate, which is why food as medicine has so much potential, if and only if we can understand it at this level of detail, so that we can identify plant sources that have specific compounds present that can have desirable, precise health effects. So we started our search with metabolic health, and I walked you through that example. We have also now started to look at sugar management or glycemic response, which is a very related condition around diabetes. But this is only the beginning. Once you have this map of data that connects plants and human health, we've started to map areas for digestive health, and digestive health is extremely complicated and very, very important, as well as mental wellness and bone and muscle health. And so the world is our oyster. Brightseed finds the connections between plants and health benefits. We take to market ourselves some of the crown jewels, like the example of metabolic health that we walked you through, but we also work with companies from agriculture to food and beverage and health companies to catalyze them in the entire ecosystem and accelerate the transition to food as medicine. So we both partner at a technological capability level as well as at an ingredient level. Our goal is not only to have a one-off discovery here, but to have a portfolio of ingredients where we can set IP markers and create a portfolio of value that will ultimately shift the health paradigm to one where food is the main source of health and not a vector for chronic illness. A closing thought on Brightseed, and you guys will hear a lot of companies today, and you heard a lot of companies yesterday, is that although we're a biotech and a biosciences company, technology doesn't need to be used to re-engineer or ferment or recreate nature or food. I think there is a tremendous opportunity to use technology like we're using with Brightseed to understand nature more deeply than any human brain can, and validate the wisdom of the co-evolution that we've had with nature for millions of years. And ultimately make that accessible in everyday products to populations that need them the most. So we're poised to make a dramatic impact in human health and longevity for hopefully many generations to come. So that's an overview on Brightseed. I hope that was interesting, and there's a lot of richness underneath each of these areas, so please send over questions. I want to end with a brief story of who I am and how I got here, and share more about the Brightseed team, because there is nothing that can be done by yourself. The team is what makes an entire difference. These are my partners, Jim Flatt and Li Cheng. These are two of the most brilliant people and scientists I know, as well as just good human beings, and it's a privilege to be partnering with them. To all the students on the line, this is an MBA in between two PhDs, and it does mean that one can find technical co-founders and build an amazing company. But it was a journey. My journey after business school started with a hypothesis of areas that I believed provided a lot of value very quickly, and in areas that really needed innovation. I joined a tech startup, and then I joined a food tech startup. I learned as much as I could. I got exposed to as many opportunities as I could get my arms around. I took a ton of risks, and I asked a lot of questions and hopefully added value in the process. And I met Jim and Lee at a company where previously the three of us worked together. We really believe in the future of food and health, in the way that that Brightseed now materializes. And now 5 years after graduating, the opportunity arose to pursue this vision with them. So it wasn't something that out of business school I wanted to go out and build be an entrepreneur. It actually came out of a conviction of the value that could be added in this space, and a conviction of working with amazing people is always worth the journey. And it also spreads, and this is where I'll end. We've have the luxury and the privilege of working with amazing advisors on the business side and on science and health. Our investors, who you can see along the bottom, have been fantastic supporters. The rule of thumb of working with not only people that are smarter than you, that complement you, but also people who believe in what you believe, is very accretive, and it can be the foundation for fantastic teams, and hopefully a foundation for a company like Brightseed that has its best years ahead. So with that, I think we're leaving over a little more than 5 minutes for questions. Elizabeth, feel free to guide me, and I'm happy to hear what you guys have in mind.
Great. So this is Maria here. Elizabeth jumped off to prep her next panel, but I'd love to start with a question from John, which is, traditional plant-based medicines from native peoples have typically been dismissed by conventional medical practitioners. Can Brightseed's technology be used to validate whether these centuries-old practices have origins in real biological pathways?
Yes, yes, and I love that question. It is traditional medicines like those in ancient cultures, and Native Americans is a great example, tend to have very mixed clinical evidence when they do. Some of them don't even have any clinical trials behind them. The reason our Brightseed's technology can be really beneficial for proving that this ancient wisdom indeed has validity is that we take the research to a deeper order of magnitude in terms of resolution. So we don't, for example, we wouldn't do a validation on an ingredient. We would do validation on the phytonutrient that is present in the ingredient. There is widely differentiating. Plants can express very little or a lot of specific desirable compounds. And without optimizing for that, there is no way that a clinical trial will give you consistent results. And so, but only with this capability that we've developed to go into that molecular level, can we prove, or can we have the basis to then design studies that prove the efficacy of traditional medicine.
Awesome, thank you. Next up from Ian. You talked a little bit about your partners, but who do you view as your most important partners in implementing the plant kingdom knowledge you harvest? Food producers, pharmaceuticals, government agencies, or other groups, and why?
Great question. You named all of the members in the ecosystem, and I would even add agricultural producers, because the way we grow and harvest is the very beginning of what compounds end up being present in our everyday food. The most important allies that we consider here is actually food and beverage companies. So even packaged broadly, CPG companies that can make these nutrients accessible in everyday foods and beverages and products that people are familiar with and know and trust. Because it's only if and when we change these food habits that we will be able to have an impact on diet-induced chronic disease. It's not about getting sick from a diet-induced chronic illness like diabetes and then curing it. It's about preventing that to begin with, and we can only do that with the right kinds of ingredients in the foods and beverages that we consume every day.
Great, thank you. All right, I think we have time for one last question, and that is, what unconventional sources of knowledge have you found to bring some of the most promising discoveries? Farmers, tribes, healers, functional doctors, herbalists? What groups do you want to engage more?
Great question. You did not mention a group that I think is important, which is pharma. That is something that is foundational for our searches. For all of its faults and things that the pharmaceutical industry and just the paradigm of only treating disease after it's present, there's a lot of faults with that paradigm, and in many cases it was built for another era. However, there is a lot of very strict and very specific data, and data which documents specific modes of action or receptors in the body. When I mention biological pathways, this is knowledge that the pharmaceutical industry has developed and the biomedical industry has developed over decades. And this is the basis of what we use to train our algorithms so that our artificial intelligence searches can be very targeted thanks to this foundational knowledge. So super important to codify these insights so that we know how to validate what traditional medicines and farmers and the rest of the community can bring to the table.
Awesome. Well, Sofia, thank you so much for your time today. This was a super interesting talk. We're so grateful that you were here with us. And up next is a panel on innovative CPG and plant-based products for a healthier world. So thanks again, Sofia, and see you all soon.
Thanks, Maria. Bye-bye.